Hello, I'm Debbie Bell-Hosking for FinextraTV here at the Temenos Community Forum 2026 in Copenhagen. And I'm joined by Rodrigo Silva, who is the President Americas Temenos. And we're going to be talking about banking in the Latin America market. We've been having a great chat off camera, so hopefully we'll be able to continue. So, of course, welcome to our TCF 26 studio.
Thank you, Debbie. It's great to be here.
We've been having a great conversation off camera. Let's bring that back now into the present. What would you say are the top priorities for banks right now in Latin America?
So Debbie, Latin America, there's so many different countries with different cultures and the way to interact with the banking sector, banking system. But I would say in general, Latin America has a very young population, and they were one of those pioneer markets to adopt digital super apps, digital payments. And I believe what they need to do now, and one of their priorities, to make sure that all that experience is seamless. So you have digital payments, you have digital wallets, you have real-time payments, and they need to work to make sure that that experience is seamless for all their clients. The other piece that is super important is making sure that they are with the electronic payments, with the digital payments, comes also digital risk, digital fraud. So you see a lot of the banks in Latin America adopting AI-modeled, behavior-based fraud detection systems that can help minimize the risk around digital payments, around digital experiences. You see the use of AI also around hyper-personalized experiences, the use of chat boxes, so on and so forth. You also see banks focusing on AI when it comes to modeling risk, modeling financial risk. So AI, again, is front and center. And you also talk to some banks that are using AI to create better risk and cost mitigations in the back office as well, automation. So that's super important. Now, none of that is possible if you don't have also a very strong back office system. So the third priority, I would say, is core banking modernization. And you see a lot of financial institutions that are taking advantage of modernizing their core pieces by pieces. There's still a high unbanked population in Brazil. About 50% overall is still unbanked. So what banks are doing is they're adopting modern cores to go after that population, sometimes opening greenfield operations to go after a specific segment of the market to bankerize them and bring financial inclusion to that population as well. So super interesting. And last but not least, doing all of that within a highly complex regulatory environment. Latin America is known also for socioeconomic troubles and issues. You have election years coming up. You have strong regulations around open finance, around how banks are modernizing, how they are providing financial inclusion. So they have to deal with all of those innovations, dealing with the regulators, with socioeconomic pressures. So those are the main priorities, I would say, that are important for the financial institutions throughout Latin America.
There's so much to grasp there in your first answer. I'm going to pick on just the latter part, which is where we're talking about changes in politics and regulation within the region. What impact is that having on the banking industry there?
Yeah, so most of the markets have been able to adopt open finance mandates. You see Mexico launched their open finance initiative back in 2018. Brazil started with, it's already on the fourth phase of open finance. What we saw is some of the regulators initially, they were encouraging innovation. Now they're mandating open finance throughout the region. You see Colombia just launching their new regulation, I think it's called 0368, which is a mandate for the banks to implement open finance. You see Chile with FinTech Act also forcing and mandating open finance. You see Brazil, I just mentioned, with their phase 4 of open finance. So what you see is that's fantastic for the population, for the industry in general, because it forces banks to really open up their data, bring inclusion into other segments of the market to integrate into the banking system, but also brings pressure to the banks, right? It creates more competition. They need to become more efficient. So all of that is great, but brings pressures to the banks. And we mentioned before the socioeconomic and political instability in the region. 2025 was a year of a lot of elections. We have elections this year in Peru, in Brazil, in Colombia, in Costa Rica. And when you have elections, especially in those markets, investors get a little wary. They wait to see who's going to be, the party now in control, how that is going to impact the market. Financial institutions need to cope with who's coming in, government-owned institutions, and you still have a lot of government-owned institutions, both federal and state-owned institutions in Latin America, that depending on the party that comes in, there may be a change in management. So all of that brings some pressure into the market, into the financial institutions.
Absolutely, my goodness, and all those elections taking place, so everyone's going to be watching what happens there.
Correct.
So you touched on Brazil. Let's focus on Brazil now, because Brazil is known for being a particularly digitally advanced region when it comes to banking and being in the banking markets. What do you think other banking markets can learn from Brazil, particularly when it comes to their approach to innovation?
Sure. I think there's a few things that are super important that are different in Brazil. One is Brazil has a very young population, tech savvy, very digitally oriented, digital mind, first mind. And you see that in Brazil you have a population of about 200 million individuals, and there's 190 million smartphones, right? So when banks start launching digital experiences, digital wallets, digital payments, it was very quick for the population to adopt it. We also have very, I won't call it easy, but you have friendly regulation in Brazil, opening the market for new entrants. So you see examples like Nubank, C6, Interbank, which started as digital institutions, still are digital, but they're growing tremendously. They have millions of clients now going beyond just Brazil. Nubank opening operations in Mexico, for example. So the regulatory environment has always been very friendly for the banks to evolve. The other thing that is super important is a lot of those initiatives are they start with the Central Bank of Brazil. And the Central Bank of Brazil is an independent organization. And being autonomous is very important because they can launch long-term technology initiatives that are standardized for the Brazilian market, are mandated for every financial institution to adopt. One example is Pix. Pix is it's a tremendous success. Pix is the real-time payment model in Brazil. And Pix has been so successful. They launched that in 2020. Today, they have almost 90 to 95% of the adult population using Pix as their main form of payment. So I think what's important for other countries to learn is, number one, is make sure that those central bank initiatives are independent, are not, they are mandated for all the banks. They make it easy for the population to adopt, make it cheap, make it free for the population to adopt, and continue to evolve. As I mentioned, make regulation easier for banks to enter the system, provide new products, new services, promote the modernization. You see in Brazil right now, federal banks are modernizing their back office. And you see an example with Banco da Amazônia, who's modernizing their back office. And right now they are being one of the first banks that are implementing international back office systems, right? So I think all of that is important for other countries to learn and adopt, because that will help financial institutions make it easier for not only for them to launch new technology, but also bring financial inclusion into the population.
Gosh, Rodrigo, there's so much to learn from and pick up from this region. And just hearing you talk about Latin America has been fascinating.
Great, Debbie. It's great talking about it. It's great. It's a passion of mine. I think it's a region that has tremendous potential for growth. As I said, we have still a very large unbanked population, and I believe banks are catalysts for really making that inclusion and bringing that service to those less privileged population.
So let's watch the space. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Watch the space for sure. Thank you very much for having me.